Welcome to the Complaint Desk. Drop your complaints in the bin on your way out. We're just two worship pastors discussing all things worship and church leadership. I'm Danny, I'm here with Doug, and we're here to help you navigate the life and ministry of a worship pastor. Thanks for joining us today. Now let's jump right in. Good morning, sir.
How is it going?
Man, it's going. It's good to be back on after missing last week.
It is.
It was weird. You know, we're this is episode 17, so we're a couple months in at this point, and I'm at the point where if we don't do it, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, we've put it in the schedule. We've gotten disciplined to do it. So yeah, I felt the same way.
Hit the routine. Yeah, but man, it's good to see you. And I got to say, by the way, on the record, it was good to lead worship with you last week. Man. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had a great time. Had fun.
Yeah, I think the people really enjoyed having you here. I know I didn't do a great job of introducing you and all that good stuff, but man, we had a good time leading and good time worshiping together. So I appreciate you being here, and I'm glad you got to enjoy a little vacation. We've talked a couple times about that.
Yeah, 2 weeks of vacation. So
that's I don't know what I'm gonna get this year. We'll be gone for a little bit over the 4th, but that's about it.
I did yard work yesterday. I hadn't had an opportunity to do yard work in a while, so.
Thank goodness for a townhouse, brother.
Yeah.
I don't have to mess with any of that. Well, let's go ahead and jump right in today. We are going to kind of follow up on our conversation a couple weeks ago on the SBC. Now that the annual meeting is over, we're going to talk a little bit about what happened and how that, what that matters for you and for me and anybody else out there listening who is SBC. Just kind of lay out a few things. But before we do all that, brother, why don't you go ahead and kick us off? Tell us what you've been reading through this week as you've been chilling out, relaxing, maxing, all cool, and shooting some b-ball outside of the pool or whatever you've been doing.
Flash 90s right there. Well,
lay it on us, man.
Kind of what it's going to tie into what we're going to talk about today, but Galatians 5 and other passages that reference this, Jesus himself actually talking in the Gospels about this. But Galatians 5, starting at verse 13 through 15, he says, "For he called you to be free." And the context of the conversation here is the religious leaders were telling people when they come to Christ, if you're coming to Christ, you have to be circumcised. You have to do all these ritual law things in order to accept Christ. Mm-hmm. And automatically all of us Christians say, well, it's only Christ alone. But we do this same thing. So let me read this. "For you were called to be free, brothers and sisters. Only don't use this freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but serve one another through love. For the whole law is fulfilled in one statement: love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, watch out, or you will be consumed by one another." Kind of goes what we're going to talk a little bit about today, but it is a fantastic reminder that even because we are free and we have that freedom in Christ, that there is a responsibility that we still have, a responsibility to one another, a responsibility we have to a lost and dying world, and it becomes more acutely focused because we're saved, because we have that salvation. Yeah. Basically, put it this way, we were bought off the slave block, and we have a responsibility to the one that bought us from that slave block. So,
right. Yeah, it's a good word. What translation are you reading there?
That was CSB.
Okay, that's what I thought.
The official holy... I got into a little bit. I went back and read some of the amplified version, and...
I'm going to mute you.
You're going to mute me? They can still hear me. I got control of the video part.
We'll mute you off
the podcast. I was reading through the Amplified version, and I had to go back and look a little bit about what the law was talking about. Interestingly enough, this was specifically, people use this as a wide range of, this meant the law entirely, which it does to a certain extent, but this was the familial law, the family, how to treat other people, your relationship with others, part of the law. And Jesus was just saying in other passages in the Gospels, this is how you should treat people because you have freedom, so.
Yeah, it's a good word. I want to read from a book you probably don't hear a whole lot about most of the time. I'm kind of deep into the prophets at this point in my reading plan. And I just finished up, I think, on Monday, maybe Tuesday, Hosea.
Ooh.
And I'm just going to read the very end of Hosea, but before I read it, just a little background here. If you're not familiar with the book of Hosea, Hosea talks about, it's a picture, okay? You have a picture of a guy marrying a prostitute. Excuse me. Picture of a guy marrying a prostitute, and that's a picture of how God loves us and what we have done. And he's speaking specifically to Israel. But you've got Hosea. He's the guy. He marries. God speaks to him and says, "Go marry this prostitute, and this will be, a picture of what Israel has done to me." And the whole book is, she continually runs away from him, but he continually loves her enough to call her back and to want to be back with her. But the very end of the book, struggling over here this morning, Hosea 14, the very last verse, it says this: "Whoever is wise, let him understand these things. Whoever is discerning, let him know them. For the ways of the Lord are right, and the upright walk in them, but transgressors stumble in them." So let me back up just a little bit to the top of that chapter, chapter 14. "Return, O Israel, to the Lord your God, for you have stumbled because of your iniquity. Take with you words and return to the Lord. Say to him, take away all iniquity, except what is good, and we will pay with bulls the vows of our lips. Assyria shall not save us. We will not ride on horses, and we will say no more, our God, to the work of our hands. In you the orphan finds mercy. I will heal their apostasy. I will love them freely, for my anger has turned from them. I will be like the dew to Israel. He shall blossom like the lily. He shall take root like the trees of Lebanon. His shoots shall spread out. His beauty shall be like the olive, and his fragrance like Lebanon. They shall return and dwell beneath my shadow. They shall flourish like the grain. They shall blossom like the vine. Their fame shall be like the wine of Lebanon. O Ephraim, what have I to do with idols? It is I who answer and look after you. I am like an evergreen cypress. From me comes your fruit." And this is a great word, though. "Whoever is wise, let him understand these things. For the ways of the Lord are right, and the upright walk in them, but the transgressors stumble in them." I mean, that's the whole of Scripture, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's interesting that the whole of Scripture is essentially boiled down to Hosea 14:9. Know my word, know my ways. Seek after them, seek after me. Stop following after, well, according to this, stop following after the work of your own hands. Stop following after others to save you. Your true mission, your true purpose is to seek after the Lord. If you do these things, if you follow the ways of the Lord, the upright walk in them. The transgressors, they stumble in them. So I just thought, as that book wrapped up, I thought, you know what, that's a great picture for us. I said, because we get sidelined by so much stuff.
Yep.
We get sidelined by our own
wants and desires.
Yeah, our jobs, our families, our hobbies, even. We get sidelined by so many different things, and it just doesn't take anything to kind of pull us off path, right?
Yeah.
And so the admonition to seek the ways of the Lord because they're right, and the upright will walk in them, and the transgressors will stumble. I thought that was a good word this week as I was reading through that.
It's an interesting parallel to show what, and a lot of people understand this, and the literacy of Scripture, in other words, the literal meaning of Scripture. Some people would take this as an allegory. I personally believe this happened. God told Hosea to do these things specifically, and some people take it as an allegory that this is just a story to give reference. God told him to go marry someone he knew was not going to be faithful to him.
Gomer.
Yeah, and his commitment level to that covenant was a picture of what God would be towards Israel.
Mm-hmm.
That's just tremendous to me. Tremendous to me.
I mean, you think about it, we would not say that work is our God. We would not say that family is our God. We wouldn't say that money is our God. We wouldn't say those things.
We wouldn't say them.
But look at how we act, though.
Mm.
We're chasing the dollar. We're chasing the beach house. We're chasing, name it. And I'm not, please hear me if you have a beach house. Good on you.
Let us come do a podcast from your beach house.
yeah, can we do it on location? I'm not saying that those things are bad things. I am saying when they become the primary thing, then they're bad things.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just like, your car. I know when I was a teenager, man, it was all about the car,
Mm-hmm.
right? But, those things take the place of good things.
Well,
I hear people tell me all the time, I don't have time to read my Bible. I don't have time to
mm-hmm.
pray. I don't have time to stop and do this, that, or the other as it relates to faith. Oh, we'll be gone for 3 months as we're out at wherever we're going to be, so we won't be worshiping with you. That those things, I wonder, right?
Yeah.
Do you have time? Of course you have time to read. Who can't take 15 minutes to read? Put your Facebook down.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, anytime you begin to start to justify your actions, your behaviors, your disconnection from God, your disconnection from God's family, because what would people say? Well, we're going to go to church at the beach, and then okay, whether you go to church at the beach or not, you're still disconnecting from your church family, and then you begin to justify, well, God never intended all of us to have big church like this and blah, 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 blah. When you get in the waters of justification, you're already down the slope. You're sliding down the slope.
Yeah.
I like the bare rawness of what God told Hosea. Do this. Here's what's going to happen. And God doesn't tell us what's going to happen with our lives, but he told Hosea, this is not going to be a good thing. She's going to cheat on you. She's going to go share herself with other men and all these things. Yeah. And I want you to be faithful as a picture of what I am. So he really had a God-mandated way of acting and being, and he had a right. God-focused, just like we do today. Just like we do today.
Yeah, well, it's all pretty interesting as you dig into particularly the prophets, because I mean, if you read the stories and you take them as what they are, I mean, it's a picture of who we are ultimately. Most of the prophets are written to Israel or Judah.
Yeah.
Some are written to, the Assyrians or whatever, but most are written to Israel and Judah. And while we're not Israel or Judah,
right.
we certainly see ourselves in that picture, right?
There's a principle there.
Yeah, I was talking to my neighbor the other day. And he was talking about cultural cycles, if you will. And I told him, we've talked about it here. Mm-hmm. I told him, if you want to understand who we are today, go read the book of Judges. Yeah. And you'll see the cycle. You'll see the cycle. It's the same cycle that we experience today, just it just looks a little bit differently. But the cycle is there. So, anyway, and please hear me if you got a beach house. It's all good. I'm not calling you out because you have a beach house.
Yeah, and let's not get into the whole extreme right of it. You have to be, at the church every time the doors are open, or you have to be in everything that's going on. And nobody's saying that, or well, people do say that, but we're not saying that.
They do. Yeah.
It is a heart level commitment. Think about this. Hosea going into this understood and knew what was going to happen, and still had to almost in a way close his eyes to what he saw, and just like Abraham, like David, like all of them had to close their eyes to what they see against them and keep pressing forward in what God said to do. What Abraham was going to have to kill his son and drag his son up here and tie him to a bunch of sticks and burn him. Oh my goodness, come on. He had to literally just sell out to what he sees and commit and follow the Lord. And that's where the
Trust
rubber
in
meets.
what he's told to do.
Yeah, that's where the rubber meets the road for us. Staying committed. It's not what we say out loud as much as it is where our heart is and what comes out of that heart.
And the beach house is not the problem.
Yeah.
The problem is when we focus on we put more of our focus on earning money
Mm-hmm.
so that we can have those things than we do what God has blessed us with.
Yeah.
Right, and how he has blessed us and what he's doing in us.
I don't have a beach house, so I don't have to worry about that.
I have a little tiny house, and that's okay.
That you live in.
I do, and you can tell that it's well lived in. Stuff everywhere.
No, that's us too, brother.
Well, let's jump in this morning. Last time we talked, we were a little ways from the SBC, and things were starting to blow up as the annual meeting was coming close. And now that it's over, it was Tuesday and Wednesday this week was the primary meeting. There were other things going on, but the primary business meeting portion of that would have been Tuesday and Wednesday. And so we just kind of want to go back and, we talked a lot about the SBC last time. We want to follow up a little bit on what did happen, our takeaway from that. I will tell you, if you want to know way, way more about all this stuff, go listen to the Not Another Baptist podcast.
Yep.
Those guys, they're deep in the weeds of SBC stuff. In fact, one of the hosts of that, Matt Hensley, he was elected to the president of the Pastors Conference, which happens Sunday night and Monday.
Yes, yeah. It's always the initial part of the week, yeah.
Yeah, I know it's definitely Monday. I can't remember if it's Sunday night or not. But anyway, but he was elected as president of the Pastors Conference, so I thought that was pretty cool for him. Dr. Matt Hensley, I should say now.
Dr. Matt Hensley.
Will be here very soon.
With his big red beard.
No, he got it. He got it. So, yeah, he's all in. Dr. Matt Hensley with the big red beard, that's right.
Yep.
And he sat right in front of one of the microphones, so he made it on camera quite frequently over the over the meeting if you didn't see him. But so one of the things I do want to set up, we got a couple things that we need to lay a little background for. One of those, and one of the hot button topics for this year's
one
of them was the resolutions on CRT, right? That we knew that this was going to be a big issue.
Yes, critical race theory.
We knew that this was going to be a big deal this year because there were people that were mad about resolution. I think it was 9 last year where they talked about, CRT and all these things.
Well, specifically race relations, it was not directed at CRT. Hadn't quite kicked off in its intensity, and again we're delving into.
That was the big topic, man.
It was a big topic, but I think. Well, we can get into that, but I think large and whole, I don't think there's a Southern Baptist church anywhere in the United States or any that I know of that would fully wholesale buy into CRT itself. And it just seemed to be as it got talked about more, it seemed to get bigger and bigger, and people are like, okay, what is this? Everybody had to go look it up. And
so before we get too deep into that, I want to explain what resolutions are.
Yeah, please do.
So there was actually a guy, I don't know who he was. I didn't catch his name because I was kind of half listening at that point. There was a guy who got up and explained what resolutions are, and I think one of the things he said was really good, and I'll explain that in just a moment. But resolutions, all they do generally, as far as Southern Baptists are concerned, there are two primary functions for a resolution. Number one, a resolution will state generally what we are for or against, and ultimately really has no bearing on what your church or my church does.
Right.
There is nothing that says we've passed this resolution. If you don't follow it, you're out.
Right.
So what a resolution will do, in fact, this is what kind of the CRT motion for this year, I can't remember the resolution number offhand, but what the motion this year basically said was we reject anything that says that there is a reason for broken relationships, racial or otherwise, we reject the notion that there's a reason behind those other than the sinfulness of man. Okay.
Yep.
Basically, what we're saying is CRT cannot provide any insight that we don't already know. We know that our relationships are broken because of sin.
Yeah.
Relationships between one another, relationships between husband and wife, relationships between the individual and God. Those relationships are broken because of sin. Okay, so that's primarily what this year's resolution was about.
It
So
was
that
resolution 9 is what.
9 was last year.
Was it 9 last year?
9 was last year. It was like 20. I don't remember.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
It really, ultimately, it doesn't matter what the number is. We'll just give you some reference if you wanted to go back and find it. But I promise you, it won't be hard to find. Search for SBC CRT annual meeting, and you'll find it.
Yeah.
So, oh my goodness, the Celtics are trading Kemba Walker.
What?
Sorry, that just came across.
Newsflash.
Wow, I did not expect that. Kemba played for the Hornets.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Back to topic.
CRT.
So what that resolution said was we're against all of this. Not there's no bearing on that.
Right.
So
collectively, a resolution means we are together as a Southern Baptist Convention resolved toward this specific thing.
So that's to say that all that to say. So, okay, Southern Baptists passed this. I come back to my church. I can teach CRT all I want to.
Yeah, because you're not. Each church is an autonomous church cooperating.
I can teach that as a valid theory all I want to in my church.
Right.
I'm not going to. I mean, I'm just saying.
Right.
There really is. All that says is, as the convention as a whole, we're against.
Here's the guidepost for where people in the Southern Baptist Convention are going and aiming for.
Now, an important thing about resolutions, because one of the things they wanted to do was they wanted to go back and rescind. There were a couple of older resolutions from, who knows, there was a Confederate resolution from years ago.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what year it was. It was a long, long, long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I thought whoever that guy was, I wish I knew his name. Whoever he was, he's on the resolutions committee. He basically stood up. He said, look, he said, I understand what you're trying to do with this. He said, but here's the thing. Resolutions happen in a certain period of time. And you can't really rescind that resolution because that resolution said these messengers at this meeting on this specific date said blank. So
some people are treating it like it's a constitution and bylaws kind of a thing.
So, right. So essentially, let's say we get to SBC annual meeting 2081, okay, 60 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And we've learned that, I don't think this is the case, but let's just say for whatever reason we've learned that CRT is a valid theory and it's true, and they try to go back 60 years to 2021 to rescind that resolution. There's nothing to rescind because that was 2021, the group of 2021 messengers was speaking into their time, and you can't make them unsay what they said. Now, you can pass your own resolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can say whatever you want to say in your convention at 2081. If you decide that CRT really is a good thing, it's compatible with Scripture for whatever reason.
Which no one is saying, by the way. No one is saying.
No, this is just an example. You could go and you could pass your own resolution in that conference, okay, in that annual meeting. So that's one function.
Mm.
The secondary function, or a second function of a resolution, and this one relates to the sex abuse resolution. This resolution basically is an actionable resolution, and what it says is it acts more like a motion. It says I'm trying to remember what he said. The ERLC, I believe, will study or will appoint a task force to understand the overreach of the EC, particularly executive committee, as it relates to the sex abuse scandal,
That's
how
an
all
actionable
these things
resolution,
play out.
right?
That is an actionable resolution. It's one that they will take, and they will appoint a task force, and they will actually do. They will do work. They will have an outside investigation, and that will be reported back. So that one is an actionable motion. That is a thing that will happen. But again, it only impacts SBC. And, I don't know exactly how all this functions right now with the credentials committee and everything, because this is new. But in the middle of all of this, if they were to come to my church and say, hey, we're coming to your church because we have evidence of XYZ.
Right.
And I said, no, I will not cooperate. I don't know what that does to my SBC status now.
Right.
Does that remove me as a cooperating church? That's what I don't know.
In the past, it's a very, very thin line to walk because of the autonomy of each church. What they have done is taken some churches who have had significant issues and significant sin going on, and they have
particularly cover up.
Right. And there's factual evidence to that, and more than just a handful of people are just saying this. It's an actionable kind of a evidence thing. So they have disfellowshipped with, and that's the extent of what they can do, is say, you're not, we acknowledge that you, and they tread lightly with that. They don't do that just willy-nilly and just toss churches out. And what does that mean for that church? They can go on and be a church and continue to move on at their discretion. So this is not a legally, as far as the world's in a sense, binding thing.
Yeah, the only thing that really changes is, you're not allowed messengers to the convention.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, in Anaheim, California next year in mid-June, you will not be seen. At least not as a voting.
Right. You won't be able to sign in.
You will not be registered as a voting member.
Yeah, you can show up, but you can just sign in, or you wouldn't be able to sign in and participate.
Yeah, you would
in the
be
voting.
Relegated to the visitors' room or whatever they call it. So that is a resolution in kind of how they function and what they do. So as we talked about that, there are, those are the two big issues in relation to resolutions that came up. So there was CRT, and then there was the sex abuse stuff. And in some ways, they're all related. Even the presidential vote was kind of, I might say the presidential vote actually turned out to be the biggest issue as far as, not debated, but as far as what turned out to be the bigger, most contentious issue, I guess. I don't know. I'm not saying that right, but
yeah, I would say on an important scale, because the particular candidates were divided on opinions and of those issues pretty starkly, I would say.
Yeah, so you had the ultimate SBC presidential winner was Ed Litton.
Ed Litton.
He was kind of the average, everyday guy, right? Adams was the same. I think Adams brought a lot of attention to himself because he's Mr. Transparency, right? He just put everything out in the open.
Yep.
And look, I'm not opposed to that, but I think that scared a lot of people away.
Right. Yeah.
Because what is this guy going to say?
Right.
What is this guy going to do?
Brash, loose cannon, kind of a feel.
So
we're starting to embrace more people.
He never really had a shot.
Yeah.
And I would agree, but based on the vote, he got 4% or something like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't much. So I don't think he ever really had a shot. You had President Al Mohler, president of Southern Seminary,
who has been SBC president before.
Right. He's kind of he's the talking head guy, right? Mm-hmm. He is
his podcast is way better than ours.
Yeah. Yeah, and he does every day.
Every single day. Yeah.
Every day. At least during the week, he does it every day. But he's, big Reformed theology kind of guy. I would say Southern is probably the Reformed seminary of the SBC seminaries, if you wanted to label it that way. And then you had Mike Stone. Mike Stone, and here's where we're going to get a little bit deeper here. Mike Stone, pastor from Georgia. Is he Georgia? Where is he from? I can't remember where he's from. Georgia, Alabama, somewhere down south.
Yeah.
Rural church, small town. Most of the town goes to his church. Okay, huge church.
Mm-hmm.
Small town, huge church. But Mike Stone was kind of put forward as the Conservative Baptist Network candidate.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about the Conservative Baptist Network.
Blackshire, Georgia is where his church is at. Yeah.
Georgia, okay. So the CBN, not to be confused with the
television network, yeah.
CBF. The CBF is a Cooperative Baptist Fellowship.
Right.
Those are the more liberal of the Baptist in the South anyway, Conservative Baptist. So the CBN, the Conservative Baptist Network, is a brand new establishment, all right? And they're started by a group of folks. Turns out Paige Patterson is really heavily involved in this.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not familiar with all the issues with him lately, he was president of Southeastern.
Western.
For a long time.
Eastern, yeah.
Southeastern for a long time. And then he's pastor, president of Southeastern. Then he went to Southwestern. In fact, he had not been gone too long when you and I started at Southeastern. He was president of Southwestern. And then there was this whole dust up over how some sexual abuse scandal was handled while he was at Southeastern. And this whole thing blew up on him, ultimately gets him removed. The trustees make a power play. Turns out all that stuff fails. He's removed from power, and according to some people's words, they were just thrown out with nothing.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. They were thrown out with nothing.
They're thrown out with nothing. Not true, but all right.
Right.
So there was this whole big thing, and then some of the trustees made a power play for this fund that funds Baylor and Southwestern. There was this whole big thing about the Pattersons trying to redirect funding from the SBC entities and Southwestern specifically, over to the Sandy Creek stuff. I can't remember what all those names are in there,
right.
But at this point, redirecting funds away from that fund that helps Southwestern and Baylor to his own foundation, the Sandy Creek Foundation. All that got overturned. Those trustees were removed. So one thing that you do need to know is in the SBC, any position of power or authority, whatever that is in the SBC, all of those are controlled by trustees. So we could not go into this meeting and say, let's just say Ronnie Floyd has not done what we've wanted him to do as the president of the executive committee. We cannot remove him in the annual meeting.
Mm-hmm.
That's done by trustees. So the way this plays out, particularly the way the conservative resurgence played out, is you elect certain people to certain positions, and you kind of chip away at it position by position until eventually you have a majority, and then you can pass the things that meet your agenda, right? So as trustees roll off, so let's say in this instance, trustees roll off, the CBN guys vote in a trustee. Next year they vote in another trustee. Eventually you chip away at that enough where
you've got all CBN guys on your executive.
You've got a majority, and you can do whatever you want to do. Basically, you run everybody else out, right? So that's kind of how that works. That's how the conservative resurgence worked. So back then, Adrian Rogers was kind of the figurehead. Then he was voted in as president. And so from there, the dominoes started to fall. But everything is controlled by trustees, much like it would be in a collegiate setting, right? Like you can't just go.
So it's not just any one man.
Whoever the president or provost is of,
right.
let's say North Carolina State University right up the road, you can't just fire that guy. The trustees have to do it, right? Even though I have a vote in the state, I can't just go and suggest, hey, we fire this guy, and then he's out. It doesn't work that way. You have trustees that do all of that, that kind of stuff. And go ahead. I didn't mean to step on you. I was just trying to finish the thought.
No, you're right. And how it turned out this year was Mike Stone is in with the cooperative or the CBN, and Litton is not is a guy who would more fold into the direction that we're currently going with Greer and with others that Moeller and others, because actually Litton and Moeller are pretty close and good friends and kind of see eye to eye on some things, a lot of things. But it really came down to, the CBN had an idea that because you outed our guy, Paige Patterson, because of his indiscretions, and there was proven indiscretions there, as far as evidence-wise, there was proven indiscretions there. You outed our guy, so we're going to tear down the Southern Baptist Convention. And that's kind of was their, they had the whole pirate theme. We're going to come in and we're going to storm the ship, and we're going to to me, and this is of course some conjecture in my opinion, but all under the guise of we're going to set the convention back in a fundamental direction.
Well, they were treating it as a second conservative resurgence.
Right.
Because what they suggested was the SBC was drifting leftward, more liberal.
And when you start, and we talked about this a minute ago, when you start getting in a position to where, and I know some of these names, probably more of these names than I do, when you start calling people like Danny Aiken, president of Southern Baptist, or president of Southeastern Seminary, you start calling him liberal, I'm out. Because that's, if of the top 10 conservative, biblically oriented, and biblically focused people on this earth, Danny Aiken probably is one of the top 10.
I mean, at that point, you're just making stuff up.
You're making stuff up to try to, and I see it this way. You can kind of throw into this if you want. I see this as much like our political elections in the past several years here.
I would agree.
A lot of let's scare people to death with all this stuff to scare them on our side. And that's a small way to put it. I understand there's a lot more complexity to that, but why do people throw falsehoods out there? Why do people throw lies out there? They try to get you to believe it, to motivate you to do something different. So if they need your vote, Cooperative Baptist Network, not Cooperative Baptist Network, the Conservative Baptist Network, CBN, wants people to get off the track that what the leaders were going, let's throw out all this stuff and all these lies, and you're following liberal people, and they're trying to change they don't like our president, they don't like the country, they don't like all these things. What? Really? And the average, and I don't mean this in a demeaning way, but even me, the average me is like, wow, am I following the wrong? Are they liberal? Well, I can speak for the man and the men that I know, somewhat, not personally, but somewhat connected to. Danny Aiken is not a liberal man. Not a liberal man in any sense. Al Mohler is not a liberal man in any sense. No, J.D. Greer is not a liberal pastor in any sense of the imagination. David Platt, not a liberal man in any sense of the stretch of imagination. So when you start calling those people liberal and they're trying to ruin our convention, that kind of tells me about all I need to know about you in some ways.
The CBN, they produced a video with, of course, they used Dr. Aiken,
right,
and he said this, and honestly,
he said specifically that there is the scriptures are not sufficient, and I there's no evidence to that whatsoever. And I one thing that I heard in Southeastern in the seminary, my time there, your time there, Danny Aiken was a strong, Scripture is sufficient. Let's go back to the Bible. It is sufficient for all things. And he would always say that and always talk about that.
He still does.
Yeah, and always. So what we're saying is that they're just lying, period.
Yeah.
They're just lying.
There was a guy in the seminary president's report, there was a guy who stood up, and it was a fine question. I don't have a problem with the question.
Right.
He basically, he stepped to the mic and said, Dr. Aiken, do you teach CRT? And look, Dr. Aiken's got to be the most gracious man I think I've ever met in my life. Yeah. As kindly as he could answer it, he said yes and no. He said, we do teach it. We teach what it is. He said, because our pastors need to know what it is. They need to understand what it is that is influencing the culture right now. So, yes, we teach it. Do we hold it as true? Absolutely not. We believe that sin is, he went through this whole thing. We believe that this is the problem. CRT is a method by which the culture copes with that problem. But as Christians, we know that it's sin.
Right.
And that CRT, yes, we want them to understand what it is. It's just like when you take an economics class, you learn what socialism is. You learn what communism is, right?
Yeah.
You teach them. Yes, you teach them. But you don't teach that those tenets are valid to hold or are useful to hold.
Right.
But you need to understand the concepts that are behind
You need to understand what you're dealing with. And here's a fundamental flaw that I see, and maybe this is what this is all about. And I don't like to use the words conservative or fundamental because those mean good things to me, but they mean different to different people nowadays, in this time.
Yeah.
So let's just say there are some that would say you don't need to know anything about, it's all sin. Anything from the world is all sin. You don't need to know anything about that. You just need to understand and read the Bible and know the Bible. Okay, I believe that you need to understand and read the Bible and know the Bible, 100%. But let's take it in the case of a missionary. A missionary from this Western culture, Western world, gets dropped off in India. Is the Bible going to arm him with all the right things? Yes. Is the Bible going to help him understand the culture better? To some degree, yes. But he's going to have to learn the culture, the people, the surroundings, get to know how they live, why they do things. All those things are going to help him understand how to reach them better with the gospel. So it's nothing, and that's the divide right now.
Well, here's the bottom line. The gospel is the gospel.
Right.
Jesus Christ, perfect sinless human, born,
death, burial, resurrection,
dies
right,
on our behalf, resurrected, now reigns, rules right hand of the Father.
Amen.
That's the gospel. Everything else is context. So what does that look like in America? What does that look like in Africa? What does that look like in Siberia?
Right.
I mean,
and people like Russell Moore and Danny Aiken and J.D. Greer and others have said, yes, we understand that CRT is a sinful base and a sinful way of, but it is a scope in which we can use to understand what we're dealing with and what we'll have to deal with in the future.
It gives you insight to what the culture's thinking.
Right. Whether wrong or right, and we understand. So, and I've always understood it this way. My home, I call it my home church Angel and I were married in. Pastor Rob used to mention this all the time. We use the Bible as the lens to everything else. Right. We can use other things and the culture surrounding us to evaluate what's going on, but we better look at it through the Bible, right? So, but others would say, no, you don't use anything else. You just use the Bible.
Well, I mean, I think in everything you do, you evaluate the culture, right?
Yeah.
In every, whether I'm talking to my neighbor who lives right beside me or whether I'm talking to an Asian believer on the other side of the world, you've got to understand the culture, because the way the American guy that lives beside me comes to Christ is not the way that the Asian believer on the other side of the world is going to come to Christ, right? Because culture is so different. And the way you reach people here is not the way you reach people there.
Same gospel,
so you use different methods
right,
to proclaim the same message, to get people to the same place. And if CRT doesn't tell me anything I need to know about the gospel.
Right.
It doesn't tell me anything I need to know about anything except my neighbor believes this.
Right.
My neighbor believes that this is a thing. He believes that it impacts our society, our culture here. And I've got to understand that lens that he's viewing culture as I share the good news with him.
It's like... It gives me another example to think about that you said that. It's on a grander scale. It's like leading a Muslim to Christ. If my neighbor is Muslim and I'm trying to lead him to Christ, I need to understand what he believes. I need to understand a little bit about his religion and why he believes the things he believes. Otherwise, I can do what us good Southerners do in distance evangelism. I can leave a tract in his mailbox, but what is he going to do with that? I mean, he's going to, and then the audacity of some people to say, well, if they don't accept Christ, they don't accept Christ. It's not my fault. Well, it might be in the fact that you didn't humble yourself enough to know and try to understand who that person is. See them as a
Well,
person. See them as
you can turn them away.
right. You can to the detriment of the testimony of Christ. Yeah. So all we're arguing is here at this point is saying, we would be on the side of those who believe it's a valuable tool to understand our culture, but it's not the Bible. It tells us nothing about the gospel, and there are those who would disagree with that. But here's my catch with this. Again, there is no Southern Baptist Church in America buying into to CRT that we know. And the argument was put out there that our convention leaders are trying to take us towards CRT. No, they're not. They're just saying that this is a mechanism like other mechanisms to understand our culture.
Well, I don't think we can say that there's no Southern Baptist Church.
Well, maybe not, but
because I'm sure there's some church doing it.
There was none that was Danny Aiken's not going towards CRT.
No,
J.D. Greer was not going towards CRT. None of these guys. None of these guys.
100%. But it's interesting. So let's talk just a little bit here. As we kind of wrap this up. One of the things I thought was interesting, so the presidential election ultimately went to a runoff. So first ballot, I thought it was really interesting. I did not expect this. I did not expect Dr. Moeller to get only 26% of the first ballot votes.
I kind of didn't either. Yeah.
I thought it was going to be like 30, 30, 30, 10. I thought it was going to be closer to that. But it was not. It was Adams never had a shot. He was like 4 or 5% of the votes. And the other guys split much higher. Litton and Stone split much higher. I was really surprised that Moeller only was at 26%.
Well, I and this is my conjecture here, I would say that the CBN folks, Stone and others, did a good enough job to scare the junk out of people by mentioning Reformed and pushing that kind of thing, because that scares everybody in the world. And
well, I just thought ultimately, I just thought it was interesting.
Because they attacked him as well.
Yeah, I'd expect a guy like Moeller though to pull a higher percentage.
I would think so.
So it goes to second ballot between Litton and Stone. Litton ultimately wins 55% to 40, 52 to 48%.
52.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I didn't do the math. I just thought, 52 to 48. Yeah, I thought that was interesting, but I only thought it was interesting. The vote being close was not. Whatever.
Shocking.
That is what
like
it is.
Yeah.
That was not shocking. Where that does come to bear, though, is when the executive committee put forward their budget and financial and budgetary plan. The convention votes on that, right? The convention says, okay, yes, we support this plan. Go forth and conquer. That plan was voted down by nearly unanimous vote.
There was a couple in the room that said they only saw three votes for. 3 out of 17,000 voters.
If you want to be conservative on this, I mean, some were saying 15 to 20.
Yeah. Well, and what we're saying is too, the resolution package for the financial dealings of the upcoming convention steered a lot of money to the executive committee for their control.
So the CBN was had been pushing. For more funding, essentially for more power to ultimately go to the executive.
So they were setting it up to where Mike Stone would win. There were some existing and still are some existing CBN guys on the executive committee, and they would have seized a bit more control and fundage to where to direct it. They would have immediately.
If you control the money, you control everything.
And their plan was to immediately shut down the ERLC, and kind of abolish that. And for whatever you think about that, that was the agenda and that was the purpose of the whole thing.
So what really draws my attention, though, is how soundly that was defeated. And then for Mike Stone to turn around and get 48%, 47.8%, I think is what it came out to be, percent of the vote. There's a disconnect. Like Mike Stone is the guy that pushes for this financial and budget plan.
Yeah.
But you soundly defeat that, but you still vote for the guy that would be a proponent of this plan. Well,
it's a two-tiered thing. So in the beginning, you had 4 guys. You had Moeller, Stone, Litton, and what was the other?
Adams.
Adams. Okay, Adams really was never in the picture. So those votes came out, and it was Stone and Litton in the lead. So they had a runoff because it was pretty close within a certain.
Because you have to have 50% of the vote.
Right. And
50% plus one vote.
then there was largely, a few thousand people in the room that had to decide who voted for Mueller, several thousand people in the room who voted for Mueller. Now, where do I go? Now, if you break that percentage down, 3/4 of those went to Litton. About, I'm roughly estimating here, but 3/4 of those Mueller votes went to Litton, but some of those, and you have to acknowledge, some of those went to Stone.
Yeah.
So I think what folks are saying, and let's be honest, the average, I guarantee, how many thousands of people do you think showed up that had no idea this stuff was going on?
Oh, who knows?
Yeah. And they're like, what is all this? Mike Stone allegedly is railing on some sexual abuse people in the hallway, and all this stuff's going on. People are like, what in the world? And again, to an autonomous church, do you even care? Is the question too. But that's what was going on, and I wonder how many people in the room actually knew. We have a little bit more of an inside track on some of that because we know some of the people, but maybe that's the disconnect, is people just didn't know.
I really thought it was interesting, though. I mean, to soundly defeat the CBN in multiple votes, and then for Stone to ultimately pull 48% in a runoff, there's a disconnect somewhere.
Yeah,
and that's an interesting one to me. But
well, there was a bit of denying too. So there was a bit of denying by Stone and some others to be even
a lot of denying
to be even part of the CBN. Now it came out right before the convention started. Yes, that they were tied to Paige Patterson. They were tied to that, but they pretty much denied it the whole time.
Well, Betancourt kind of blew a lot of this up.
He did.
Right before, because he's like, look, Russ Moore's not lying about this stuff.
Yeah.
He's not making this up.
There were a few others that came out too and said he's not lying.
So this is the other interesting thing that happened was, so the motion on the sexual abuse investigation was sent to the resolutions committee. Said, well, let's send this to the executive committee, or I think it's who they said to send it to. And the motion on the floor was, wait a minute, why are you sending this to the people that we want to investigate? What do you think they're going to do with this?
And they turned it down immediately.
He said, so I want to put this up for a vote, and you have to have 2/3 vote to overrule that referral to committee. Okay, so soundly passed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how many votes there were against putting that motion back on the table, but it wasn't many. It was kind of like the budget vote. It wasn't many.
Yeah, they turned down the opportunity to even discuss it. The executive committee did.
Yeah,
and then sent it back, and that was basically a defeat for anybody that wanted. Well, again, it got overturned later as a resolution was put forward.
So there's been some interesting things, but that one right there, to be able to soundly pull almost a unanimous vote again on that, to overrule what the resolutions committee said, to put that before the messengers. And so now I guess there will be an external investigation into the executive committee and all those involved in all this cover-up.
So there were two parts of it, though. In the beginning, it was put to the committee, executive committee. They turned down the opportunity to even discuss it. Then it got sent back to resolution and voted on by the majority in the room to, yes, we want, and the problem was the investigation needed to be done outside of the executive committee because that's who they're investigating. So that, as it stands now, culmination of everything, Ed Linton can appoint a third-party task force to investigate the executive committee and their dealings with covering up sexual abuse in Southern Baptist churches, which we already know there's tons of evidence of. So now they can investigate third party, and the executive committee has to cooperate. So Ronnie Floyd, Stone, and several others, the whole executive committee, no matter what side you're on. So, and the release from Russell Moore, Ben Court, others basically said, yes, it was going on, it was being covered up, and it needs to be investigated. Yeah. So that's the whole summation of it.
Well, I thought that was a bold move to pull that back out, and I'm glad he did.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very pleased that it passed.
Because it needs to be investigated. Let's be honest.
I will tell you.
Yeah.
I will tell you this. I know you and I have said this before. I've never been to SBC. Even when it was here in Greensboro, I didn't go to the SBC.
Annual meeting, you mean?
Yeah, the annual meeting.
I have, actually.
I'm not sure I cared enough to go back then. But
you and I have been into local meetings, so we've been to the North Carolina convention.
Yeah, we've done the North Carolina thing
right.
a bunch. I was on the board of directors for a while. So, but if it's up to me, I don't plan on missing another one.
I think I'm the same way. I have been to the annual meetings before. I've gotten in the last few years, several years not been, but I plan on being in Anaheim next year. Mm-hmm. And I know you, I know what you're going to say. I'm not going to see a show, and I'm not going to see the fighting. I'm going because it's important. And for the important issues that we're talking about, just the fact that we see a need for those to be investigated. It was a cover-up going on. If there wasn't, praise the Lord, let's get it out in the open and move on. But it can't be done if people like us, messengers from churches, don't go and participate.
Well, so the change is not going to happen if the same people continue to go.
Right.
And so if we want to see things turned more toward a gospel focus, clearly that's not going to happen.
I would say continued. Yeah, I would say a continued focus. We've had some leaders in these last several years who have pointed us that way, but it's got to continue.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about JD at all. I think he did a great job. In fact, he is hilarious to watch navigate the annual meeting. Barry McCarty, if you don't know Barry McCarty, he is the man. He is the parliamentarian that keeps everybody straight.
Dude, he just looks around at him every time.
I know. Everybody would say something, and JD would turn and look at Barry. It was hilarious. I loved it.
There was a resolution put forward I thought was interesting to turn the air conditioner on in the room.
That guy was the hero, and I don't know. I don't know if you saw it on the second day in the presidential reports. He got up and he responded to Dr. Aiken's report. He said, "I don't really have a question." He said, "But I think we have a misunderstanding." He said, "You blocked me on Twitter because I stepped in to defend you, and I think you thought I was piling on." And he said, "I would like for you to unblock me." And Dr. Aiken says, "By the time this afternoon's over, we will be following one another on Twitter," or something along those lines.
17,000 people in a room. It's all tense, and and he comes and does that. Yeah, that's funny.
That dude was funny.
But then the guy
I resolved that you turn on the air conditioner.
He said, "I've been to 3 or 4 different mics trying to get my resolution in, and to the glory of God, can we turn the air conditioner on?"
I got a kick out of that, man. He was killing me with that. But that guy was the star of the show.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
But, there's a lot that goes on in these meetings. It's a good time to meet new folks. It's a good time to catch up with some folks. Like, I would count Matt Hensley a friend, Dr. Hensley. I would count him a friend, though I've never met him, not face-to-face.
Right.
Talk to him a ton, text, all these kinds of things.
Oh, yeah. And I've never met him in person, but communicate through Twitter and things like that. And I know for the boomer generation, you're like, Twitter, that's not a relationship. Well, in the grand scheme of connectiveness, we connect through a lot of people these days through these types of venues or avenues.
I would count him a friend. I would have him preach at my church. I mean, I wouldn't have an issue with that. But I thought it was cool that he was elected in that position. Go check out their podcast, Not Another Baptist Podcast. They do such a great job of all that's going on, and I promise you, I don't think they ever go an hour like we're bumping up against right now.
And they're probably a lot better than we are.
They're a great group of guys, and I'm glad. I'm happy for Matt, and I look forward to what he's going to do next year. I look forward to being a part of it. But I will lay this on the table as kind of the last thing on this discussion. The bottom line is this: when people walk out for the International Mission Board report, when you walk out of that after your vote, that says a lot.
Now, describe what's happening because, well, let me describe what's happening and you comment. How about that?
Go ahead.
So the room is jammed full by all reports, and we could watch it stream. We could watch updates on Twitter and things like that.
It's full. 16,000 messages?
Almost 17,000 messengers crammed in a room for all the resolutions and all the voting. The International Mission Report comes, and what that is an update on what Southern Baptists have been doing with their monies. What have they been doing with the gospel?
Mm-hmm.
And it's half the room leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw people on Twitter, well, this is a business meeting. We shouldn't even have this stuff here. We shouldn't have music and we shouldn't have all these things. We should be here for the business meeting. And brother, sister, whoever you are, I strongly oppose that. It's not just a business meeting. Yes, we're there to gather for business, but we're gathered, brothers and sisters, to see what we've been doing. And that needs to be seen, talked about, prayed about, encouraged.
And what we can do to continue to make progress.
Exactly.
There.
Because if you just go talk about all the bad stuff,
the hot button issues,
and then you leave and go home, what are you taking home to your church? Well, what is the Southern Baptist doing? We don't know. Fighting.
We're fighting.
Yeah. Now, none of the reports got the NAM, the International Mission Board. None of those got as much publicity as all the little hot button issues. But there was a lot of great things reported. Chitwood had a lot of awesome things to talk about and say, and as others as well.
I actually missed that report because I was in a meeting when that was going on. So
yep.
I missed it, but. I would argue that the Southern Baptist Convention will be really healthy when you have more people in the room for that IMB report or for the NAM report or for the SIN conference than you do for the presidential vote. That would be my argument.
Yep.
What's it going to take for messengers who purportedly care so much about the spread of the gospel to feel the need to spread lies about people so that their guy can be elected, which I would assume their argument would be so that the true gospel will spread?
Oh, we attach the spirituality to everything we do to justify.
And how is it that you're not staying in there for the work of our missionaries,
right.
Our hands and feet that are on the ground in the international context, whether it's Asia, India, Russia, South America, whatever, Africa, whatever?
Because they don't care.
And that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you
I'm
really
generalizing. I'm not saying everybody.
If you really believe that the gospel is the most important thing that we do, why do you not stay in here?
Yeah, you came for the most. You came for what you thought the most important thing was, and that was the vote and the reserve resolutions and all those things.
You make it clear what's really important when you walk out during a mission board report. So anyway,
it goes one-handed to another, and we won't continue to talk about this, but we talk about race relations. We talk about sexual abuse in the church. What does it say when that's what you fight about? What does it say when you don't want to hear what sexual offenders have gone through? What does it say when you don't want to hear what a minority or whatever group of people that's not white has to say about what they see? When you don't want to hear that, and you don't want to take that in as constructive, humble criticism, what does that say?
Well, clearly our priorities are still not right as a whole. There's a lot of work to do there. And please hear me. If you see me in Anaheim next year, if I'm not in that room, drag me back in that room.
Yeah. Unless I'm just about to bust and I got to go to the bathroom or something. But I'll guarantee
too much coffee.
Half of the room didn't have to use the bathroom. So
They were trying to go get Nashville barbecue.
Baptists.
They were trying to make it over to Martin's before
Yeah.
the rest of the crowd did, I'm sure.
I mean, it's good. It's a good restaurant. Yeah.
Martin's was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I enjoyed that meal we had there back over the Sing conference a couple years ago. But anyway, there is a lot good going on, I will say.
Yeah.
I'm encouraged. I'm glad that some of the things were defeated that were defeated. I'm glad that some of the things were passed that were passed. There's still a lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm.
As a convention, we still have to be better.
Yeah.
Reject those outliers that are trying to. I mean, that's what I would call the CBN. I would call them in general. They're outliers. They're making something out of nothing.
I would call them specifically outliers, not in general.
Yeah.
I would label them as a little bit more than that. But
so there's a lot to do, a lot of work to do. But before we quit today, before we sign off, I know that you're coming off of 2 weeks of vacation, man. Do you even know what you're doing Sunday?
I planned it before I left. The difficult thing for Sunday is going to be, well, not so difficult. I got really good band and people, but haven't had practice in 2 weeks. So since I've been gone, and we'll roll into Sunday and we'll practice that morning. So we're starting off with Unstoppable God.
Okay.
We're going to Evidence.
Okay.
Resurrecting. And closing the service, we've got a little bit of some other things going on Sunday, so we're closing the service with In Christ Alone.
Okay. Are you guys doing much of anything for Father's Day?
Is it
It's Father's Day.
No, not this year.
Yeah,
not this year.
We'll obviously we'll wish everybody happy Father's Day and all that stuff.
Yeah,
We got a little video we'll show at the end, but outside of that, we're not doing a ton in that regard either.
So I just heard this morning Father's Day is the 20th most recognized holiday. Mother's Day is in the top 3.
I believe it.
So
look, here's my thing, man. You don't have to recognize me. Just let me take a nap.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me. Just let me take a nap.
I got my Father's Day present. I got brakes and rotors for my truck.
Yeah, all right. Very good. Well, hey, at least you can stop.
Yep.
At least, hopefully, in that regard, you'll be around to see next Father's Day.
Yes.
So I talk about traditional first. Heaven came down, love divine, all love's excelling.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, you like that one,
I
don't you?
I know it.
Yeah, Amazing Grace, and we'll close out service with I Need Thee every hour. We do choir singing. I don't know if we talked too much about this, but choir singing.
I saw them setting up before I left Sunday.
This will be their 4th week in the loft, and the 3rd week they've sung. I will tell you, man, and maybe we can talk about this next time for those of you that do have choirs, man, getting that rolling after COVID, after them having 15-ish months off, 16 months off. Oh, boy, I'm learning a lot about what it takes to start that.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never come in into any ministry starting a choir.
Yeah.
But restarting from nothing, whoa.
I'd love to have to have a 100 member choir. We're more of a contemporary church musically. I'd still love to have. That's the biggest praise team you could have, man. Just have. It's awesome. Yep. Yeah,
I'm with you on that. But maybe we'll talk about that next week. Talk about how we can restart some of these things as we're getting going. But that's traditional, and of course, contemporary is our first service. We're teaching a new one. We're doing King of Glory this week. Only King Forever. And we've got, we're going a little new Crowder on everybody here with Good God Almighty. Hey. They like that. They liked that a couple weeks ago when we did it, so
I'm gonna have to
shocked them a little bit.
Yeah,
it's fun. That is a fun one to do.
Yeah.
But we'll close out the set with King of Kings. Pastor will preach, and then we'll get into Mighty Cross if you're familiar with that one. I think it's Elevation.
Yep.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's Elevation. But we'll go Mighty Cross, and we're tagging on from the bridge of Faithful Now.
Okay.
So
doing a mashup.
Yeah, check our live stream. It actually works out really well. The group is doing great with it. We're going with track drums this week though, because my drummer's out of town. So it'll be different, but we'll make it work.
So, yeah.
We'll miss our drummer, but
I enjoyed meeting your band and folks, your drummer and bass player and everybody. It was good.
Yeah, man, I got a great group here. I love working with them. They're a lot of fun. So, but anyway, listen, folks, as always, we appreciate you tuning in. Yep. Check us out, thecomplaintdesk.com. Email us info@thecomplaintdesk.com. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you like to hear, what will help you out, what will be a blessing to you as we move forward. But to all of you, we're praying for you this week. Whatever you're leading this week, Doug, praying for you, brother.
Appreciate it.
Glad you're kind of back in the saddle this week. Look forward.
I'm
to
hanging on the side of the horse right now, so
leaning. You got the lead
I'm
going.
leaning.
Well, we're looking forward to what God's going to do this week. Happy Father's Day to you.
Yay!
If you're listening on the podcast, we'll be a day late, but happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. And we appreciate all that you do. I'm grateful for my dad. We'll get to have dinner on Saturday, I believe, is what we're going to do. So my dad is preaching this week. That'll be cool.
All right.
Not here.
Right.
He's not preaching here, so I won't get to hear it. But unless they live stream, I actually don't know that. I'll be able to hear him. I hadn't heard him preach in over 20 years, I think.
Wow.
I think the last time I heard him preach, no, it's been one time since then. I was going to say the last time I heard him preach was possibly my ordination. But anyway, folks, we're praying for you. Thanks for tuning in today, and we hope that you have a great week, and we will see you all next time here on the Complaint Desk. Y'all have a great day.